Hello, I'm Kennedy, and this is part of the customer experience gap model session. In this part, we will learn about the general concept about this regarding this model, which is can be divided into two things. So this five gaps model can be divided into the first classification is the gap between the company and the customer, which has a direct interaction, and also what is in the customer's mind, the perception in the customer's mind. That's the first classification. And the second classification is actually within the company. So this five gaps model, we have to be careful how to treat them, okay, because not all of them is related to the customer. Most of the gaps is actually related to our own company, our own employees, our own standard, our own system. Only two gaps that is directly related with the customer. So among those five gaps, the first and the last gaps, these two gaps are the gaps that related to the customer directly. The first is the listening part, listening gap. It is when you try to explore, try to dig inside your customer and try to absorb their voice. That's the listening gap, how you listen to them. Okay, so the key is you have to interact. You have to interact directly to with the customer. Therefore, you can get their voices. And the fifth gap is the customer perception. So this is really things that going on in their mind. It is how we create things. We create a service that they might perceive in somehow we planned. Okay, so it's about positioning. It's about how to make our service, our brand be seen by them just as we planned it originally. So that's the fifth gap, the customer perception. Okay, those two gaps are the only gap that is related to the customer. So you really have to interact intensively with the customer to gain these two gaps. But the other three gaps is actually within your company. It is within the employees. It is about your system. It is about your guidelines. The company yourself. For example, the third gap is about the writing of standard. It is based on the first gap, listening. After you listen, will you apply it? Will you make that voice of customer become your guideline? Okay, so it is creating a guideline. Who created? You yourself. You have to prepare some teams or members which dealing with creating guidelines, which is practical and applicable. Then the fourth gap. The fourth gap is performance gap. It is not directly related to the customer. It is within the company. It is among your employees. After you create the standard on the second gap, then you have to maintain and monitor it. Will the standard, will the guideline be applied by our employees, especially our frontliners? That's the performance gaps. It is how you make a system to make sure every employees apply, implement that guidelines. How you monitor them, how you create a reward system to give to the employees that consistently comply to the guidelines that you created earlier. So that's the third gap. And the fourth gap is about communication, right? It is about the promise you make related to uh, you deliver the promise. That's the fourth gap. What are you communicating to them? For example, through advertising, promotion, flyer, brochure, anything, compared to what you really deliver, what you really give to the customer. Is it like, do you keep your promise? Do you fulfill your promise? That's communication gap, right? It is within you, because you create the promotion, you create the communication, and then you also the one that fulfill or not fulfilling that promise. So you see, among those 5 gaps, most of them is actually the gaps that created by you, by our own company, by our own employees. Therefore, actually, we can't really manage those gaps, right? Because it is controllable. It is us, ourselves, that can solve it by creating a standard, a performance monitor, and also a communication tools or a communication, advertising and other things. The other 2 gaps, they are related to the customer. So this is the conclusion is 5 gaps can be divided to 2 things that you need to push push yourself, interact intensively, frequently, and the other part is you push yourself, not the customer, yourself, to bring a better, excellent service. That is the point that we covered in this video. So, thank you.